Alright guys, so wow. To be honest, I feel that the PS6 might be doomed to be the last console that is released by Sony, and maybe generally speaking, I think we might just have a reset where companies are gonna have to do something to, really make amends with the community and bring something of value again. What you're looking at right now is me playing Horde Assault. I've been playing Days Gone since release. It's one of my favorite video games of all time, and I think it was very much worth purchasing the remaster for many reasons. It's a great game that has been enhanced. Horde Assault alone makes it worth the purchase. If you love the original game, supporting the team that made the original game by buying the remaster is actually worthy of your time as a gamer. Why am I showing you this footage and talking about Days Gone? Because it's a very important game, in my opinion, in the timeline of video games and how video games are currently, the state of video games. To me, Days Gone is probably one of the last, if not the last, really amazing video game made in this industry. And I know that sounds like a stretch, sounds a little exaggerated, but if you think about it, most of the games that we've had since Days Gone are either remasters of really good games from the PS3 era, or remakes from the PS3 days, or remakes from the PS2 or PS1 days. All the Resident Evil remakes, all that stuff that has come out ever since. But to be honest, I feel that none of those games compare to something like Days Gone. Days Gone is an entirely original new game, and it brings so much to the table in terms of gameplay and replayability. I mean, right now, with the remaster, this is like the 5th time that I'm playing the game, and I still don't get enough of it. Only another game does that for me. The other game that I'm talking about here is Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain. Those two games are just so amazing to me that I haven't really played any other titles, modern titles. I have all the remakes, Resident Evil. I beat Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, Nemesis, remakes, just because I love Resident Evil. But honestly, for example, the Resident Evil 4 remake, Resident Evil 4, I was never a big fan of. I did play it the first time and I enjoyed it. I really liked it. It was a very revolutionary new game. But when I got the remake, I was like, yeah, this is just the same game with the better looks. And I was never into Resident Evil 4 that much to replay the game. So halfway through Resident Evil 4 remake, I was kind of feeling bored already of the game. And that's a testament of the quality of Days Gone and Metal Gear Solid 5, in my opinion, that even after playing those games 3-4 times, I still come back to play them again. I'm a casual gamer in the sense of how long I play video games, daily. It's a 1 hour, 1.5 hour a day, or every other day thing for me. But I do enjoy it a lot. It's something that really helps me reset and just refresh my mind and cool down from the day and start the day fresh, and then once again at night play some video games if I have the time. So it's something that I do after all the work, all the grind of the day. But I started noticing that most video games out there, modern video games for PS5, PS4, I start playing them, and then a few hours into the games I just don't want to play them anymore. What it feels to me is like Days Gone is a perfect example, and I'm still coming back to it. So the replay value, like I said in another video, the ROI, the return on investment that I've gotten from Days Gone is incredible. It's just crazy. Same thing with Metal Gear Solid 5. Still playing it, and it's a 10-year-old game now, right? So what I'm getting at is that the video game industry, what it needs is more games like these. More games where people feel like just playing them over and over and over, and it just doesn't feel that way anymore with most games. Like PS5, for example, I played Stellar Blade. I played the game for 2 hours and I was done. I was bored. The chick's butt looks amazing, and that's pretty much what that game is. Like, just stare at the woman's rack the whole game. That's the only thing that it's got going for it, because the game itself is kind of boring to me. And it happened to me with God of War when it came out on PS4. God of War, the new version of God of War, like older Kratos, that is a dad, all that stuff. Great story, but the gameplay, after a few hours, I was done. I was bored. I was like, what the hell is this? I just can't get into it. And most modern games do that to me, with the exception of Days Gone and Metal Gear Solid 5. I have enjoyed playing other games. I loved playing Resident Evil remakes. Resident Evil 2 remake, I played like 3 times. Nemesis, I only played once. I didn't think it was that great, but I did like it. And, there are other games that I really love, like modern games, like Evil Within 1 and 2. I love them, especially Evil Within 2 is really, really probably the scariest video game out there. So in my opinion, what the gaming industry needs to do is just forget about the graphics. If you look at the graphics in a game like Days Gone, even a game like Metal Gear Solid 5, those graphics have aged beautifully. They still look amazing, and it's not very realistic. If you look at Metal Gear Solid 5, it's not a very realistic looking game, but it does the job of immersion. Even though you can clearly see that it's a game, and none of the textures or the effects make it look like a real life scenario, it still looks amazing enough to get you involved, engaged, and fully immersed in the experience. Days Gone is a step further into that. Way more realistic looking, way better looking graphics, but still not so much in terms of graphic demands, not so realistic that it ruins the game because of the demanding and taxing requirements for the consoles, right? So, in my opinion, what the industry needs to do is start focusing on quality and just going back a little bit when it comes to the graphics, and just saying, okay, let's slow down here and focus on quality again, and just forget about the graphics being so amazing. Like Delta, for example. Delta looks insane, especially in the beginning. So, going so far into the graphics, looking so realistic, which in my opinion, like Delta in the very beginning of the game, when you're at the swamps in the jungle, is probably the most beautiful looking game so far, or a good contender for that spot. But I think that the industry should look into that and go like, okay, let's just step back a little bit. There's no need for that much realism, and let's focus on the actual fun, on making new games and not just making remakes so that they have an excuse to ramp up the graphics and make them more realistic. But I have like a very small, like a handful of video games that I keep replaying. What is happening with the industry that 90% of the stuff that is coming out doesn't even feel engaging enough to me to finish them once, not even once. And then you have these games like Days Gone and Metal Gear Solid 5 that I've replayed 5 times. So what is it about those games that captivates me so much? And I know I'm not alone with this. There's a huge community of players out there that feel that Days Gone is the most underrated video game of all time. And I agree with that. And there's an even bigger community of people that are still playing Metal Gear Solid 5 all the time, even with Delta coming out. They're back to Metal Gear Solid 5 because they can see past the graphic beauty of a simple remake that is a remake of a game that is very old and the gameplay is not good. The story of Snake Eater is amazing, but the gameplay is not good at this point, especially for those who love Metal Gear Solid 5. We're spoiled by the greatness of the gameplay of the game. And it can't really go back to the gameplay of the old Metal Gear games, even though the story is amazing, right? We're not talking about that. And it just feels that we don't have any titles at this point that are really doing that have that magical element that makes them so replayable, so enjoyable. What I think needs to happen is just go back a little bit, step back, and understand that graphics don't really need to keep getting any better for people to keep playing video games. People want to be able to enjoy something, and they want to buy a game for $60 that they can play for several years. You know, they don't want to buy games for $60, $70, even $80 that you're just going to pick up and stop playing 12 hours later. And that is where the industry is really failing. So just forget about the graphics being too amazing. Keep them at a level like Days Gone. That's more than enough. I'm sure most people are not going to complain that if that becomes the graphic standard, you know, as long as the games are amazing. So let me know your thoughts on this. Subscribe if you like the content, and I will see you in the next one.